Episode 2, Attack of the Clone Wars. Problems.
It's just problems. There's not one episode of Star Wars where everything is honky-dory.
Comes back, gets in tune with those midichlorians, baby.
Yeah, you don't know what he says, but then C-3PO is like, don't say it like that.
R2-D2, does he have the friggin' force? I don't know.
Too much science.
Yeah, minimal guardrail action. You know, there's no sign postage saying, hey, for sure death if you go down here.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Narrative Nerds Podcast. I'm here today with the man, Shane Patrick Ryan, and one of my very good friends, Mr. Frank Johnson. It's going to be a good time. What's going on, boys?
Doing good.
Yeah, living the dream. Excited to have Frank on. Definitely.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just as excited, too.
Yeah, we've been talking about it for a long time. Frank went ahead and got himself a microphone. This is going to be sweet.
Just to grace your ears with, the third voice for the podcast. Just to grace your ears, he got the mic.
Bringing together that trilogy, you know what I'm saying?
Appropriate, seeing as how we're going to be talking about that, one of the most prolific narratives that spans many generations, Star Wars.
Oh, yeah.
Ooh. Ba, 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 ba,
and copyright. Cut.
TM.
Yeah, TM.
I'll just cut that part
Yeah,
out.
right.
Yes.
Sure.
And I'll add like some little bluegrass snippet or something.
Yeah, there you go.
Something that's not Star Wars.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right, guys. So for those of you out there that are not as well tailored to the knowings of the incredibleness of Star Wars, I'll give you just a little easy to go, just a general overview of what Star Wars is. Essentially, we've got Episode 1. It's the Phantom Menace. Problems. I guess I could do all 9. Just go problems.
Oh, yeah.
Episode 2, Attack of the Clone Wars. Problems. Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. More problems.
It's just problems. There's not one episode of Star Wars where everything is honky-dory.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, no.
There's no way.
They come in small waves, but the waves are quick.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
You're quick to get right back into more problems. So anyway, we start this beautiful conundrum with good old Episode 4, A New Hope. Frank, when did that come out? Like back in the 70s? Early 70s? 73 or something?
77.
77.
Late
Yep.
70s. Good time to be alive.
Oh, yeah. I was 2 back then.
2.
Yeah.
Big bad Uno Dos.
Oh, yeah.
That's awesome, man. Well, that must have been really cool to see this. So those 3 movies came out chronologically. It started off on number 4, number 5, number 6.
Yep.
What was that like, Frank? Like, what was the vibe when those were coming out?
It was nothing but excitement. Everybody wanted to see this new movie that came out. Nobody knew about it. I had this mystical thing called the Force. People were just learning about it, and they had this young boy. His name was Luke Skywalker. Nobody knew about him. We were learning about his little adventure.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you ever seen that picture where he's looking at the horizon. He got the 2 suns, and it's just adventure just waiting for him.
Yeah.
It's such a wonderful that basically captured his entire story, just the beginning and even the end, because I'm not going to go too far into it, but just looking into the distance, that's basically even the way Yoda would talk about him, he would always say that your mind is never here. It's always in the future. It's always elsewhere other than right here at the moment. But that was also
where you are.
Yeah, but there was always like there was a larger world waiting for him, it was completely amazing.
That's cool. It's got a great some great semblance to like our own lives and how life is a mystery and you have no idea what kind of mystery box you're gonna get.
Yeah.
That's great. Only they took it to a whole new level. Space, man.
Oh yeah, you know,
What
everybody
can happen in space?
Yeah, everybody wanted to become a pilot. Everybody wanted to have one of those speeders. Everyone wanted a lightsaber. You know, and
the greatest part about this entire franchise, and it's such an iconic thing, is in a galaxy far, far away.
Yeah.
It gives you that hope that like it's out there and like right now, you know, like somewhere out in the galaxy right now as we're recording this podcast, there's somebody that's defending a rebel base or like, you know, killing younglings.
The weird part is of a long, long time ago.
Yep.
So you go like, man, how long ago was like all this technological advancements happening in comparison to where we are today? And why don't we have speeder bikes? Where's my lightsaber?
Well, and like, is that... So one thing that always got me about a long, long time ago was the whole like... So you see in like pop culture that in space movies, out in space, time is different. So like, a long, long time ago, how is that relative to our time if it's in a galaxy far, far away?
Exactly.
You know, like it's this weird.
Good point.
It's this weird, like ambiguous time and space that I think allows people to get attracted to it. But before we go too far on that, Carter, do you want to give us like just a really brief synopsis of the general arcs of each trilogy?
Yeah. So essentially, our first three that we start with, 4, 5, and 6, it's kind of the middle of the story. It's generally centralized around the Death Star, I would say. The Death Star being a ridiculous weapon that can destroy any planet. So we've got the good guys, the rebels. These guys are the peacemakers of the galaxy. They're trying to really hold everything together, you know. And then we have the Empire, and these guys are the corrupt
brute
government, I guess you'd say.
Kinda...
Yeah, bad faction. So they're out there and they want full power, and they, you know, pretty much want to govern everything. I don't know if there's a whole lot with like taxes or anything like that, but I guess you could compare them to a government in a sense. So essentially, they go along, the rebels go along, and they take down the Death Star twice. Let's just say that. Yeah. It gets nuts. And then after those three, we backtrack to the beginning of how the story kind of essentially came to be. We've got number 1, The Phantom Menace, 2, Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith. That's kind of the coming age of the clones, of how they go to the Empire. So, like, you guys have seen all those stormtroopers. I'm not actually sure. Are those the same? Are the clones the same as on the Death Star, the troopers?
Yep.
I'm assuming so.
Yep.
Yeah, I think they just kind of revamp them a little bit and give them different helmets.
Well, that's how we know how they have so many, is that they're all clones.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And some of them are like kind of AI, and some of them are real people.
Yep.
It's kind of a mix between the both. And then the other thing with this entire series is you've got handfuls of different droids that can do different things, which can be very useful at times and can be also very detrimental at times, which adds a whole other little spectrum to
sometimes
this.
Used as like a comedic release too.
Yeah, C-3PO is the king of the jokes.
Oh yeah.
And he does it on accident.
Yeah.
I think R2-D2 is definitely one of the ones with the most attitude.
Oh yeah.
Because you don't know what he says.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't know what he says, but then C-3PO is like, don't say it like that.
Now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't say that, R2.
Yeah.
It always blew my mind. Like, I get that C-3PO should understand R2. It always blew my mind that R2 would, you know, just beep and, like, with shit at Luke. And Luke would be like, yeah, you know what? Yeah, you're right. I'm just fucking up right now. Yeah, that's absolutely R2. Wow, you're so good with words.
And I think in one of the movies, C-3PO is talking to somebody about how he can speak, like, thousands of languages in the galaxy.
Yeah.
Like, he's very complex. but at the same time, I think it's kind of given that like C-3PO may have potentially had like his brain washed. I don't know. That could be like a whole conspiracy type of thing. Because R2 has like one of the most like important things. It's essentially in between the 3 and 4 of Episode 3 and Episode 4, destroying the Death Star, which kind of plays into the movie they added in the middle of Rogue One.
Yeah.
He has to deliver some blueprints to Obi-Wan Kenobi. You need to save us. You're our only hope. That's kind of where the movie starts in number 4, like one of the first things you see, kind of, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, and they kind of like they tail end it really well too, where at the end of Rogue One it has like this scene in the hallway of the Death Star, I want to say.
I think it's one of the battleships.
Yeah. Well. What was that?
No, go ahead.
I think because I think Leia gets captured at the end of Rogue One, where it kind of tapers into A New Hope, the beginning there, and that's when she's like escaping with R2. But yeah, there's that scene where she's putting in, something being really cryptic, really secretive.
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
Exactly. But we have no idea what that means. I mean, until later on in that episode. But you get more of that backstory in the Disney film of Rogue One.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, so 1, 2, 3 is essentially
it's kind of based around Anakin and like the coming of age and
totally
him eventually becoming Darth Vader, which is essentially like
the key players.
Yeah, like a key player in 4, 5, and 6.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he's the entire series.
Yeah,
he is.
Yeah, I mean, Darth Vader is he's an incredibly complex villain in 1, 2, and 3. 1, 2, and 3 really gives him that like dimension too, because you never see that black suit, like cyborg type being. You see like a person, a flesh and blood person that is Darth Vader at the end of 3. And that really,
that's true.
Yeah,
that really creates a feeling of like personality, deeper personality.
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, it's incredible how you see him grow through his entire life and see how the Force works, and then just basically, like the events that change him, and then also like other important characters that influence him,
Right.
And the choices that he has to make to overcome, but also of course some manipulation. Of course, that's like I guess we can get into that when we're really discussing characters here.
Yeah.
And then I guess we have 7, 8, 9. Those are the newer ones that have been coming out lately. The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi. General synopsis: we got. I don't know, Frank. How do you see those movies? I remember when you were living here in Connecticut. I remember you had The Force Awakens on quite a bit.
Oh yeah.
And you'd love to watch that movie over and over.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was a new energy that we kind of needed for Star Wars, because the first three were pretty good. They were, but I think we're used to the original 3, because that kind of had us in the middle of the largest conflict. So I think we were kind of spoiled with that. 1, 2, and 3 built up. Like, it was a slower story in terms of building up Anakin. And now, and some people didn't like it. Some people did. And then, it was like, now, like, it was and part of it was we knew that story. We knew the outcome. We knew that he was going to become Darth Vader. But now you didn't know what was going to happen. So that was the fun part. And, I mean, obviously, when they had the ads on YouTube, they built it up really well. And there was no disappointing in terms of the action. Maybe some of the character, build up and all the development was kind of lacking, but the adventure itself was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of takes a whole new spin. We do have some characters from the past, but it's kind of a new storyline when you get Rey and is it Finn, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So those two characters, you're kind of like, oh, this isn't. I'm not used to this from the last 6 movies.
Yeah.
You know, like what's this all about? So it kind of takes you down a new train of thought, but it's still a playoff of the rest.
Yeah.
Which is really cool. You know, but so here's another thing. The daughter of Anakin Skywalker, who is Darth Vader, she kind of leads the rebellion, and what was my train of thought? Oh yeah, so going into the Force Awakens, her and Han Solo, kind of a rogue bandit, I guess you'd say, a space bandit,
Yeah.
always getting away from mischief somehow. A very exciting character, I think, played by the awesome Harrison Ford. Him and Leia, they have a son, and that's kind of another power figure in those next 3. He becomes the Sith, Kylo Ren.
Yep.
So that's a playoff, and then with the new characters along with these new Siths, it becomes a really interesting combination of confusion, I guess.
Yeah.
It's really a sweet series.
Oh yeah. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it was. I like Kylo Ren. I liked his, the idea that a lot of it was brought back to mysterious, which I kind of liked from the original trilogy. It wasn't too sciencey, even though there was planes and everything else. There's still this mystical force, and they brought it back there. They still had that same old flavor. A lot of things were missing in a lot of people's opinions. With some of the characters, and I'm pretty sure once we get into the new trilogy, we'll expand on that as well.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of pluses, some minuses, but to me, I was no disappointment at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, kind of on that note, just to give the listeners a little bit of kind of like reference. So, 4, 5, and 6, otherwise known as the original trilogy, were released in 1977, 80, and then 83, so 3 years apart each one.
Yeah.
The prequel trilogy, 1, 2, and 3, were 99, so what's that, 16 years?
Is it 88?
16 years.
Oh,
16
yeah,
years
16,
later, they release episode 1. 1999, 2002 was episode 2, and then 2005 for episode 3, following that 3-year gap each time. And then the rights to Star Wars were sold by, what was that, Lucus Film.
Yeah,
They
George
were-
I think
Lucas.
so. Yeah.
Disney bought the rights, which made a lot of people kind of like nervous, excited. I mean, yeah, it was kind of a melting pot of different emotions on that one.
Yeah.
But then 10 years later, from 2005, in 2015, The Force Awakens was released. And then 2017, The Last Jedi was released. And then the next episode, the final episode in the trilogy will be supposedly, they're saying December 20th of 2019. So,
Yep.
but being that Lucasfilm had 2 trilogies under their belt and then sold the rights to Disney, how do you guys feel about old versus new? What do you think that does to the franchise?
You want to go first, or you want me to go first, Carter?
You could jump in.
Okay.
I'll take the tail end of that.
Old, I missed the consistency. I was hoping that they would have someone along the same lines of thinking as J.J. Abrams. Some people don't like him. I love him. Like, he's amazing. And if you understand how he tells the stories, he'll throw out something that you don't understand and then explain it later. So that's just the way he rolls. And he'll do it like in the next episode, next movie, whatever. So when I heard about him directing the new movie, I was excited. And he does flashbacks. He does a lot of those things which he employed. He also does like the flickering lights. He kind of did that a little bit. So you kind of saw like the little telltale signs of him directing. Now,
Sure.
I was hoping that they'd have someone as similar minded as he was instead of going so far out and just kind of wrecking the series and then having to save it again, which,
Yeah.
so I do miss that consistency where the original trilogy was, even though it wasn't George Lucas all three films, but it was him, Kirshner, some people that were involved with the film back then that they're still involved now, but they were all they wanted to make great films, and they did, So that's the one thing I miss the most is the consistency. Like, have every film is great or better than the last.
For sure.
Yeah.
That's a big thing you want when you're making movies. You're always pushing the envelope a little further.
Yeah.
That's a huge aspect to it. I mean, with any types of movies you're putting out, or video games, or books, anything that has to do with that story, you want it to be getting better and better to keep those people on the edge.
Of course.
It's coming. That next one's coming.
Yeah.
So I guess how I see the old versus the new. I remember originally watching the original series, the first three,
Yeah.
as a kid, and then as they started trickling out into theaters with the pre-sequel, the 1, 2, and 3, and watching those and being like, wow, this animation's killer, like, this is some cutting-edge stuff right here, and especially in comparison to the old ones. But, I've always had a massive respect for old stuff, like anything vintage or just back in the day in general, like what pioneered these thoughts and these stories, what led us to this point in time. So, having that respect from the first three and then coming to this and being like, wow, they're really amping on it, just like what you were saying about how it's always getting better.
Yeah.
And then this most recent sequel, or three set of movies, those really expanded, got really cool. I mean, yeah, there was definitely some stuff that may not have been necessary, but it's when it comes down to a new dude making the films, that's a big thing, and of course they want to throw their own style on it as well. So in some aspects, it's a lot cooler. In some aspects, it's maybe not as cool to some folks.
Yeah.
It definitely depends on generation. That's why it's really cool that you're on here, Frank, is because you being around when those first three came out.
Yep.
And Shane and I being in a different era of seeing, like what we really like. It's super fascinating stuff. So, Shane, what's your opinion on that?
I think you make a really good point about the generational thing, because it's if you watch episode 4, you get of course the slow crawl like the way it begins is just different. You get the slow crawl text, you get kind of a very eased in intro where you gradually learn about all this stuff, and it takes time, and then you watch The Phantom Menace, and within 5 minutes of the start of the film you see a lightsaber out, and Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan are slicing droids when they went to do their negotiations with the viceroys or whatever. It's a different feel. And
for sure,
I'm actually going to have a hot take about old versus new here and Lucasfilm versus Disney. I actually, well, I shouldn't say actually, because I think there are a lot of people probably in this boat, but the way that a story was told by Lucasfilm, I thought was far preferable than the story, not the story itself, but just the method of delivery told by Disney, solely because with Star Wars, and maybe it's different now because they can pump out movies a little bit quicker. But with the Star Wars movies being 3 years apart, you almost had to have that closure, especially with the original trilogy and the prequel trilogy, because they were so focused on one topic. It wasn't so much like you had loose ends, but they weren't big loose ends, you know? I mean, like, well, maybe they were big loose ends, but at the same time, it was kind of like you got closure on certain things, and, like, I felt like that was necessary, where when I watch the newer movies, it doesn't feel like there's as direct of a story or, like, as like, much closure.
Yeah, maybe not as meaningful.
Yeah, well,
Like,
I mean,
as,
like,
as deep on the emotional train side.
well, and we can talk more specifically about examples, but I just felt like, and maybe Frank, you make a good point too about how, like, with the prequel trilogy, you knew what was going to be the end result.
Right.
I've always been the type of person where, like, I don't mind knowing the end of the story because it helps me appreciate the decisions and the way it all panned out along the way. I find,
Yeah,
you know, I kind of value that, so maybe that's why I'm a little biased towards the prequel trilogy. But I kind of like seeing how things unfold, even though I already know the ending. So maybe by the time the last movie comes out in the Disney trilogy, the newest trilogy, being able to go back, watch those, knowing the ending and how it all plays out, I think would just be really a lot more valuable. I might find it more enjoyable, but I definitely find that the way Lucasfilm told the story was a lot more direct and focused, whereas Disney, I think, is trying to appease to all audiences, which is great. You know, throw a wide net, but in a sense, I think it sacrifices a lot of the stuff that people value. I mean, the last movie, they spent, I don't know, 15 minutes on Finn and whomever the girl was that they were going to, like, jump ship and go and try and, like, take down that betting guy or whatever.
Oh, Rose.
Rose,
whatever her name is.
Yeah. And, like, as an audience member, I just thought, okay, I don't fucking care. What's happening with the only characters I really give a shit about at that moment in time are Luke and Rey and maybe, like, the whole of the rebellion and Kylo. You know, I don't.
Yeah.
It just kind of seemed like they fluff it up in a way that kind of draws on a lot of different characters doing a lot of different stuff. When you look at the original trilogies, and it's like, okay, you got Luke, Han, Leia, Chewie, Darth,
R2, CP3,
Darth, R2, C3PO, even a little bit, but
just a little.
But it's like you
thing.
can count the characters on your two hands. There's 10 tops. Same with the prequel, maybe with the exception of the Revenge of the Sith. But I mean, like, in the new movies, there's like dozens of characters that you're supposed to fall in love with because, like, they want to hit every demographic. They want to, which I think is great. Like, go ahead. It's
they got like Poe and Maz and
and like the thing with Disney that I feel, and this is why I say it's a hot take, is it's a cash grab, so they kind of have to do that. You know, it's a merchandising cash grab, so I get it. But for me, I just thought that it was distracting to the actual narrative of what was going on. You know, because if you're gonna name a movie The Last Jedi, but you only talk about Jedis and Force and them being limited, and you only spend like not even a third of the movie on that, you've lied to me. That's how I feel.
Yeah. That's called a bait and switch, my friend.
Oh, I got baited and switched so hard. I mean, I don't know how you guys feel. I know that's a pretty aggressive take, but I felt like it was kind of shitty of them to do that.
Yeah,
well,
they ran you for your money, man.
I remember leaving the film, and I was actually here in California by the time the film came out. And I left work early. I went to go day one. I was all excited, and I left not knowing how to feel. It was very strange. Like there's no celebration. You didn't care about the characters. Because there wasn't enough development. You didn't feel like they were in danger. You didn't feel especially after the Mary Poppins incident. We'll talk about that later. But that
You might as well just chuck it now.
that just destroyed
kidding.
the whole movie for me. But
Dude,
it was just like,
yeah.
man, it was I left not knowing how to feel, and every even the Last Jedi, there were Force Awakens, there were some things that that felt kind of rushed, but only I knew how he directs. So he would develop the character almost backwards, where he would reverse engineer their story. So he would give you the full thing, and then just
Open it up as it
explain
went.
it in the back. Through.
Sure.
So that's just how he works. That's why I was hoping that he would do the second film, and then be able to explain everything that he kind of threw at us. Like all of a sudden, Rey, all these powers, and like how did she?
Where did that come from?
Right,
Dude?
exactly. So
Who was the light switch man? I found it. It was on my back shoulder. I was like,
yeah,
who put this on me? Click.
yeah. So that was it was the first time I ever left. Well, actually, the first time before Solo that I left a Star Wars film not knowing how to feel.
Yeah, and you were in Italy when you saw Han Solo, right?
Yeah, it was terrible. Yeah.
You were like, I think I remember you telling me, you called me while you were in Italy, and you were like, I was like, how was the movie? And you were like, dude, even in Italian, it sucked.
It did.
It was not better.
Yeah, I know.
Hey, on that note though, so I mentioned earlier about being able to pump out movies faster. The old ones had 3 years in between. The new ones, Disney is a huge company, so what they're doing is they release an extended universe movie like Rogue One, and then they release a canon story like Force Awakens, and then Solo, and then Last Jedi, and then another one too. Whatever else is in there,
And the shows too.
and the
Don't forget the
shows,
shows.
Oh, yeah.
and the shows, absolutely. Why do you guys think? I mean, the fallback answer here is cash grab, but why do you think they try and do so much with this now? I mean, what do you think is the benefit being the viewer of these? Why all these movies now?
I think you said it
I-
earlier before,
Go
where
ahead.
they're trying to hit every market. I think that's what they're trying to do, but they're also diluting the effectiveness of what a Star Wars film can be.
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
sorry for cutting you off, Carter.
No, it's all good, man. I was just gonna say, there's a lot of content with Star Wars, and I feel like they might think, well, this is a bit untapped because we've got like 9 or 10 movies out right now, or I think maybe 8 or 9, and that might only span like 30 to 50% of what Star Wars is. There's a lot that's in between, like all the movies that have came out. There's a lot of stuff floating in between that hasn't been talked about.
Oh yeah,
because
of
it's
course.
not really vital to the canon. But there's a lot that happens before. There's a lot that happens, like at the end, like after where we've seen, that they haven't even touched on yet. So I mean, they have a lot to work with. So they might go, all right, well, look at this story. This is great. I was just doing some research earlier and found out that the Force was created on a planet like tens of thousands of years prior to anything that we know of, on this planet called the Wellspring of Life.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, well, that could be a trip. And that's like 10,000 years. I don't know. There's some weird acronym for the timeline. It was like BBY or something.
Yeah.
Like before something. I don't know what that stands for. But anyway, there's tens of thousands of years potentially of how we got to space. So many stories that they could build on. They could prequel number 450.
Yeah.
They could make so many movies, so many storylines, and so many comics out there, so many like short films, animated films. There's a lot of content already, and they're probably like, well, we've got a lot to work with here, so just keep pumping them out. The sooner the better. We're gonna keep making money on this franchise.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that's a.
But I think you're onto a good point though, that it's definitely getting diluted based on how quickly it's coming out. That was that's a really important thing. You don't want to just be, you know,
Yeah, you don't want to
piling
bombard people
content.
with it.
Yeah,
Then
You
they
know-
get
you want it to
tired,
be
they get
nice and
fatigued.
fresh and exciting. Yeah, exactly.
And I almost wish that. You know what? Maybe what we should do is have like a repeat podcast in like 5 years when all the movies have come out. Have somebody
Yeah.
on that's in kind of like the generation behind Carter and I, and get their take on it. Because, you know, Frank, you came in the area of the original trilogy. We
Yeah,
came in
lucky
the
enough.
In the middle.
we came in the prequel trilogy, which, I mean, I'm definitely biased towards. I like the prequel trilogy, but I'm
Yeah.
really
Yeah, me
curious
too.
what the take of the Disney babies are. You know, that like, one, love the style that Disney is bringing, and two, are growing up saying, oh, I want to be just like Ray, or I want to be just like Finn, or, you know, whomever. You know, because as a kid,
Who's Yoda?
I was like,
Yeah, right.
yeah, right, yeah. As a kid, I was like, dude, Obi-Wan Kenobi is the pinnacle,
He's my
is
dude.
the pinnacle of like heroic, you know, being. You know, like,
Yeah.
he's amazing.
Until you watch the last three or the first three movies again, you're like, uh-oh. My hero's a bad boy.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's, well, I don't know, that's a good, you guys got more on that?
Well, I saw one thing that's going
Yeah,
to
what do you got,
affect a
Frank?
lot of the younger kids nowadays is I'm pretty sure they're not liking Star Wars as much because there was a study done on the toys and all the merchandise, and they've been suffering a lot lately.
Really?
So like they'll show like the Marvel section, they'll show, you know, like the other areas, and then Star Wars is fully stacked, so they're not buying it.
That's a great leaping point on something, because
That's huge.
We haven't talked about, like, think about like all the Marvel things that are coming out, all the DC stuff that's coming
Yeah.
out, the Avengers, all this. You're getting piles and piles of Thor and Spider-Man now, and Venom. And it's just, that's a pile up
well,
too as well. So that's definitely
Let me throw something at you
potentially away
guys.
from those.
Let me throw something at you guys, and you see how you like it. I think that makes a lot of sense actually, because, and I'm gonna go back to the way that Disney tells a story. Like I said, they don't focus as much on the characters and them being great. Like look at Rey. There was one scene where she, like, maybe two scenes where she like seemed really heroic in my opinion, or seemed like she was a total badass when she was fighting with Kylo in both movies.
Force.
In The Force Awakens,
Yeah.
they fought in the woods, and then in The Last Jedi, they fought
They fought together.
back to back, which was you know,
Yeah.
pretty good fight scene.
It's cool. It shows the duality coming together.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But cool, yeah. Two scenes out of, let's say, round up, round down, whatever, 4 hours of film. Two scenes that have her as a total badass, and she's supposed to be like the fucking next coming of Christ, basically. Like, she is in the
Right.
she is in the hot seat of being amazing. But she didn't
Right.
perform and bring it like Luke did. And I think that's why kids go, "Oh, Thor, yeah, he slams his hammer and he's dope." Like, it's easy to see. It's black and white, you know? It's either
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
super and you have powers, or you're
You're another character.
another background character extra filling out real.
Yep.
Exactly.
But with Rey, it's like she doesn't know her powers, which is important to the story, much like Luke. But she also is like, I don't know, every time the camera pans to her, she has this look of like confusion on her face.
Yeah, I
So-
feel like she's a bit in the closet about her force.
Right, which is probably why they put Finn in there, because Finn is apparently he's a clone, or he's a stormtrooper, but he's not a clone, and he escaped that
Right.
lifestyle to join the rebellion, and he's kind of like a funny leader, kind of like, you know, like a second coming of Han Solo.
Yeah, I would say that's a good analogy.
And
Yeah.
I just feel like when you look at the characters themselves, nothing about them screams like, fuck, that dude's a hero. Like, when that dude comes on the screen, something's gonna change, you know? It's
Other than Poe, when he came out on his ship and he's shooting everyone down, he's the best pilot in the galaxy. That was a little bit. I was like, this dude's a badass.
I might have to disagree with you. I thought Poe was a fluff character. Like
he was a fluff.
It seemed
character,
like they just had to give
heroic.
somebody a name, you know?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So they had to have a focal character for when they were flying around. Otherwise, no one would be interested. Which I think is BS.
I did think he was mighty heroic in that space battle.
He was.
That was tight to me.
He was, and then they undermined him by the head lady being like, "Well, you were being selfish," and that's like,
yeah, you were being insubordinate.
Fair, but now you've just confused the shit out of the viewer. You know?
Yeah, is he good?
Yeah, is he good? No, he's a dick. No, he's good.
Dude.
Wait, no, he's good. But well, he was kind of being a dick.
And I think this is a great little question for you guys. Who do you guys think seems like a regular old Joe Schmo, but actually has force powers?
Is this like fan fiction time? Like,
if you want it to be,
or is this like a
based on what
favorite
you've seen
character
from the movies,
and why kind of thing?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both, I guess. Like watch, and we're talking about the newest couple movies. Seeing Rey, when you're like, all right, does she have the Force? Poe, does he have the Force? Finn, does he have the Force? R2-D2, does he have the friggin' Force? I don't know.
Right.
Nah, I don't know if robots can have the Force, but that would be some great AI technology. We could do an ad on robot AI Force, dude.
That'd be dope.
Exactly.
Well,
someday.
Well, I want to say, based on like what the Force is, it's inside every living life form. It's just a matter of tapping into it and like calming your mind enough to feel it and become attuned to it. So
yeah,
I think technically, wouldn't they all have the Force? But like, we've seen Rey.
They're just not accessing it.
Yeah, we've seen Rey tap into it and stuff like that. But I don't know. I think Finn, out of all the people that you don't expect to have the Force or don't see having the Force, I think Finn is probably the closest one to that. Out of the new trilogy.
Yeah.
That's why I thought Poe was a little bit dope, because he was the best pilot, and the fact that he was the freaking best pilot, shooting everybody out of the sky. It makes you go, oh man, this dude's a little bit in tune to what he's doing, being this good at something.
That's true.
It's kind of like Han Solo.
Anakin and Luke Skywalker were good pilots.
Exactly, and Han Solo, fabulous pilot, and also getting out of every problem he's in, and like having that intonated feeling of stuff like, oh, we're in danger. That's a Jedi thing.
Yeah, there's a fine line between verging on Force awareness and just being wily writing, like it could just be like, like Han Solo is another one where you're like, oh, he might be in tune with the Force, or that's just the way they write it, like but
it's just a lucky cat.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you're losing your Falcon to, what is his name, Calrissian or
Lando Calrissian.
Yeah. That double-crossing motherfucker. Yeah.
They ruined his story in Solo.
Do they?
They ruined it. Oh.
What'd you think of... So, I actually haven't seen Solo.
I haven't either.
So, I saw... I saw Rogue One, and I was incredibly disappointed. I honestly don't know what the point of... I don't know. I have a hot take about Rogue One. But anyways, after seeing that, I was just kind of not excited about extended universe stuff. So what was, I guess, Frank, what was Lando's original story and how did they mess it up? Also, how did you feel about Donald Glover and his performance as Lando?
Well, I guess not to like piss off the feminists, but they've been going a little too far fetched with the females being protagonists, which is cool and I get it, but like they're pushing it way too far. Where Lando Calrissian in the film is what they call a pansexual. So he will have sex with male, female, dog, robot,
goat,
dishes, inanimate objects.
Did you say dishes?
Whatever, anything.
Dishes.
They made him to be like this psychopath, like this sicko, that should be on like a warning sign, like or he should be, every galaxy he goes into, he should be registering as a sex offender or something, because.
Yeah.
And the robot that he had, he loved it. He actually loved it, and it walked around and it had the hips that it would swivel, like a little bit too pronounced, like a female. But I'm like, come on, are you kidding me? Like it's gone that far where you have to push the femaleness, and I get it. I like that, but at the same time, they're shoving it in your face. It's a little too much.
It's heavy.
I think that goes back to, I don't know if that plays too much to like the feminist side, but I do think it does go back to the trying to hit every market thing, like.
Yeah. I think it's over feminizing.
And stay relevant.
Yeah. It's a definitely. I'd agree with that. Relevance is incredibly important.
Yeah.
Especially to Disney.
Oh yeah.
Especially to Disney.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, with them coming out with, are they doing Lion King, the new one?
Probably.
They've got a bunch of new or like old films that they're redoing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, they look incredible as far as the CG goes, or just animation in general. I'm sure they're going to be fabulous films, but they're really dumping it down. They're busy people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Well, hey, on the note of Lando. Do you guys want to talk about favorite characters?
Yes.
All right.
Jar Jar Binks for me.
Hey, before we
hop in,
Skywalker, hands down.
I know this is going to be a little bit of a rabbit hole. I wanted to. We made a post on Facebook this past week asking for input on this, and we got one great reply. From one Ben Elliott. What up, Ben? Thanks for replying. And his favorite character is Vader, because how can't you like Vader? Which I totally agree with that. Darth Vader is a straight up G.
Yeah.
Just from one, his entire redemption at the end of his life, and two, his entire story too. I mean, incredible story, but. Anyways, what about you guys? You said Luke.
Well, yeah, I mean that entire. I think we already talked about it, but yeah, Anakin really drives the entire storyline. I think.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
From start to finish, and his demise is incredible, because you see his roller coaster of a life. Being good, being on the Jedi Council, being manipulated by. Senator Palpatine, who's really Darth Sidious, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He then is, I guess, a little bit betrayed by Sidious. He gives him fake promises, and his wife and child die after he is brutally dismembered by his best friend, mentor.
Yeah.
Just his wife dies. His children don't die.
Oh yeah. I'm sorry. His wife dies in labor with the children.
Yeah.
Which I think Darth Vader actually kills, right? Like, kind of chokes her out from a distance.
Pretty much.
With his raw anger.
Yeah, and she goes unconscious, which is probably not healthy when you're
giving birth.
9 months pregnant.
Yeah. So anyway, she dies. He's fueled with anger because Palpatine tells him that his children also died. And, you pretty much got nothing left to live for. So just let the hate flow through you. Mm-hmm. Which kind of drives him mad. He slowly gains higher prestige with Palpatine, gets, empirical commanding abilities, and becomes a massive antagonist. eventually gets to the point where they're on the Death Star. It's about to explode. Luke has just previously been like, dude, you don't have to be this way. I know you're my dad. You really dropped the ball, but you know it's never too late to come back. And I think Vader knows that Luke is his son, which means that Palpatine, he should have known that Palpatine lied to him, you know?
Yeah.
But anyway, he keeps driving forward, eventually gets to the point where he's like, fuck you, Palpatine, his dark Sith mentor, and goes, you're a bad dude, chucks him over the edge while he's trying to kill his son. Palpatine dies, and Luke is leaving and is like, come on. But Vader's like, it's it for me.
Yeah.
You know, I'm done. And he dies on the Death Star. And that's just like, you get 6 movies, and boom, there it is. Like, it all leads up to that scene, I think. Like, obviously, that's not the pivotal, but that is a massive climax.
Mm-hmm. Of course. That's
that moment,
Vader's
moment of
redemption.
face to face. Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Comes back, gets in tune with those midichlorians, baby.
The big M word.
Don't drop the M word on this podcast.
I know,
Joe.
right? Too much science.
Too many midichlorians, man.
Oh my
I'm
god.
swimming in them.
But I mean, his breathing apparatus was destroyed. That's why he died. You know.
Oh yeah.
When he got hit by the Emperor, when he was picking him up, the Emperor hit him with the lightning. That destroyed his breathing apparatus, and then that, you know, he basically probably choked to death. You know?
Asphyxiated.
You know, something I always wondered about, like, the design of the Death Star is, like, for being so futuristic, their safety, like, requirements are pretty lax. I mean, there's just these deep-ass, like, bottomless fucking pits all over the place.
Go where?
Yeah, minimal guardrail action. You know, there's no sign postage saying, hey,
Careful.
for sure death if you go down here.
Yeah, no yellow lines.
Yeah, nothing like
no
that.
caution.
Stay behind this yellow line.
You know what doesn't make any sense either is that a lot of those just go directly to space.
Mm-hmm.
So how do they keep the atmosphere inside?
Well, and like, they don't even show it as like, oh, it has a bottom. You know, it's just
it's just
right.
a hole into
Yeah.
space. You're like, see you later, dude. Yeah, actually, you know, that's a reoccurring theme too, with like the Darth Maul scene of Obi. Is that Qui-Gon?
Yeah, Qui-Gon, he got
Yeah.
killed, but Obi-Wan
Qui-Gon and Maul.
kills Darth Maul.
But yeah, so Darth Maul falls through the pit, and you'd expect that to just go to space. So you're like, he's dead, but he's not dead, folks.
Yeah.
And he deserves way more screen time.
anyone think it's bullshit that so for those of you at home that don't know, in the Phantom Menace, Darth Maul sliced in half by Obi-Wan Kenobi. He actually lives and comes back in the Attack of the Clones
Yep.
cartoon. Great series,
think so.
definitely check that out. But he lives, but Qui-Gon, who's, you know, just stabbed, dead, doesn't come back. Liam Neeson.
He's not a powerful Jedi or anything.
Yeah,
like
Liam
that.
Neeson, gone forever, rest in peace.
I know, right?
He got 2 films. He was only in 2 films. Such a
Not
dope
even, no,
kid.
he's
Yeah.
one film.
One film.
Oh, it was just the beginning of the
Qui-Gon.
first.
Yeah.
Just that one film.
To
Just
the end of the
drive
first.
him off.
Just
Yeah.
cash that life insurance policy because he's done.
Fuck that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On that note,
Seriously
though.
deserves.
On that note, though, I think Qui-Gon probably tops my top 3 of favorite Star Wars characters because, in my eyes, he, even though he was only in it for one movie, he changed the trajectory of the galaxy by taking a chance on this kid. You know, on
Yeah.
this one kid, he saw something that no one else saw. I mean, even the Jedi Council, they saw potential, but they saw darkness. And if he said, all right, Yoda, all right, Mace Windu, I respect you, I won't train the boy, and left him there, it would have been, you know, it would have been the same thing all the way throughout, you know.
Yep.
How do you guys feel about Double Agent Qui-Gon? Like, he had a vision and was like potentially He doesn't look Sith-like whatsoever, of course, but
You know what?
doesn't look to be like
You know
he
what,
would
Carter?
ever be working. But if he knew that that was going to happen, because Jedis have visions, he could have projected that whole thing and been like,
You know
I'm making
what,
this
Carter?
happen.
You need to shut your mouth when you're talking about Liam Neeson like that. You
He'll
shut
come
your
out and
mouth.
kick your ass.
Yeah, I know.
I'll find
I know
you.
we're 1,400
And I
miles
will
away
kill
right
you.
now, but I am booking a flight now. Don't you dare.
God.
Frank, you can get a flight
No,
too.
but hey,
Yeah.
it totally
I'm
could
4,000
have
miles away.
totally could have happened. I mean, look at that scene where they're going to get back on the spaceship. When Anakin comes with, and Darth Maul comes up, and he's like, Anakin, duck. And then he has that kind of like little back and forth fight. And Darth
Yeah.
Maul and him totally could have bouted to the death there. But he managed to get,
Yeah.
like, come on. You know, like, I get it, it's for
mean,
the movies, but,
Fake legs, man.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
no.
speaking of double agents, I was looking into like Star Wars conspiracies, and I read somewhere that people think Jar Jar might be
Oh, my
a
God.
dark Sith.
Yeah.
because he is incredibly charismatic and kind of
Doubt
gives
it.
off the appearance that he's drunk.
That's for
but hey,
sure.
check this out. Does he become a senator in the galactic or the Galactic Republic?
Yeah, he does.
Like in the Senate.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
he becomes
Okay.
a representative, yeah.
And who also becomes a general.
Well, he was general first.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But how did this absolute incompetent fool become to high such prestige?
That's why they put
Without
him
a
up there.
lick
It's all
without
it's
a
all
lick
about
of
who you know.
smarts.
It's all about who
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
True.
He knew Palpatine.
True.
He knew everybody else. They're like, yeah, he's an idiot. Let's put him in there because he'll vote for whatever we say. So it has nothing to do with dark side. You know,
But
maybe his
didn't
brain is the
didn't
dark
Jar
side.
Jar in the Senate? Well, yeah, it is. It's probably nothing much in there, but doesn't Jar Jar Binks, while he's in the Senate, vote Palpatine in as the Emperor?
Because he was an idiot. It had nothing to do with dark side. It's just like having George W. whatever. I'm not going to get into that too much. But it's just like having someone like that and just like, yeah, you know what? We tell you what to do and, you know, you just say it.
So, could you guys safely say that there's no possibility of him being a little bit smart and playing it off like he's an idiot?
Nah.
Based on what he achieves, and then what his final massive event is, which is bringing in one of the most corrupt people in the galaxy to be the Emperor. I think there's at least enough to say that there's not evidence, but there's signs that there could be something more there.
Well,
and obviously,
Let me argue both sides real quick. I think that it's interesting that that the first kind of like characteristic that we get from Jar Jar Binks is the fact that he's kind of like this lovable idiot.
yeah,
But then you get thrown with the, he got banished from his city because he's, quote, a lovable idiot. And that doesn't make a lot of sense. So I could see it there. And then you get this big time gap where it ends episode 1 and he's kind of just like, he's still wearing that, dirty brown vest and like he kind of did his part to like help in the destroying of all those droids and stuff like that. Not really though. Definitely incompetent.
Yes.
yeah,
Big gap in time.
yeah,
And then you see him in like a long, navy blue robe and he's Senate level important. So I don't discredit that at all actually. I mean, I think it's fair.
and all of a sudden he's wise and making massive calls on a massive scale.
Well, I think he's just a good actor in the sense that he doesn't have to be wise. He just has to seem competent
Stupid.
and not
Yeah,
fuck
shut
up
his
his
mouth.
words. Yeah,
Yeah, just shut
Yeah.
his mouth and just roll with it. That's it.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's. I think there's things that you can Easter egg into like points that might make sense, but I don't think there's enough to say, oh, well, did you see that one time when he looked at that thing and it moved on its own? Yeah, he has the Force. Like, I don't know. I mean, look back at the way he was fighting those droids. I mean, it was all him just repeatedly messing up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know? And on that note, I think Jar Jar Binks is kind of like this caricature. In a sense, it's almost like a racist Rastafarian caricature weird thing, you know, like his I don't know, he's got like his ears or whatever the fuck those are tied back almost like
Yeah.
Like dreads,
mirroring dreadlocks. Even the way he talks, like the way he says thinks, like tinks. Misa tinks.
Yeah.
It's just like, you know, it's very similar to that vernacular.
It's terrible.
You know.
It's bad.
So I mean, I think there's just a lot of problematic aura surrounding Jar Jar Binks, and I think that's kind of where that conspiracy comes out of, you know?
Yeah.
Because he's that character everybody loves to hate.
Yeah, it's having a bumbling idiot in the office.
Yeah.
That's all it is. That's all he was. That's as deep as he is.
On our notes here, I actually have a question for you, Frank. When we were making our outline, we made a list of like characters we might want to talk about when talking about best characters and why. Frank, you mentioned the Millennium Falcon, and I'm really curious to hear why, one, you classify it as a character, two, what makes it the best, and three, I guess, how you differentiate the Millennium Falcon from just the overall skill of Han Solo and being a pilot.
Well, the Millennium Falcon has a history to it, so it's been, you know, there's many hands that have taken over the Millennium Falcon. When we meet it, when we see it, it's this piece of junk. Everybody, they're like, "Oh, this is a garbage. It'll never go anywhere. It's terrible." Han Solo's like, you know what? This is the fastest ship in the fleet. You better slow your roll, you know. So it's and it's gone through a lot of battles. The Battle of Tanab, that's one of them. It's a really old battle. That's before the trilogy, the original one. I mean, there's a lot of different, I mean, it helped destroy the first Death Star. It helped destroy the second Death Star. It was involved with the Planet Killer in The Force Awakens. It was also involved in helping with the fight in The Last Jedi. So it's got this own.
It's iconic.
Well,
it's its own character.
I think that's a good point. It provides a little bit of protagonist representation when you have those scenes that are all in space. It's an easy one to spot.
And different pilots.
Yeah.
Because Lando helped destroy the Millennium the Death Star. Han Solo was in the original one. Rey was in it. A couple of times. Chewie was always in it. Mm-hmm. He's probably the only constant.
I think that was what was really cool about the last, most recent three, was that guy coming back.
Chewie.
When Rey's on the planet and just the ship. Being out in the desert and what's his face, the big fish monster, is like, "Hey, that's my ship."
Oh yeah.
Akbar? No, what is his?
It's similar.
Complot. Yeah.
Hey, come with a complot. so yeah, like the ship just kind of coming off and Rey and Poe, or Rey and Finn taking that thing out of there, and then Han Solo being like, "This is my ship."
Yeah.
And then meeting up with him in space, that was pretty sweet, man.
That's just basically how that ship was hoard to every possible Han Solo kept coming back to Han Solo.
Yeah.
It would get hoard to all these different people. They'd steal it. They'd do this. They'd do that. It'd come back to the pimp. Han Solo. You know,
Pimp Daddy gets his shit.
it always came back to him.
That's true, man. There was got to be some kind of a bond there, like an unnatural bond between Han Solo and the ship.
Of course, he survived all these
fact-
different things, and you know, this is the way he did it. This is the machine, the character.
Dude,
How much of a
it's
trip
just-
would it be if the ship could actually talk, but it never does?
Yeah.
And like, you can make like a little meme about Han Solo like talking dirty to the ship,
yeah.
and Leia being off in the edge, just like not again.
I'll give you 12 parsecs.
Oh no!
I will say though, I think that like Bond is similar to like if you're a car guy and you get a car that you really like, you got to bond with that car. You know?
Yeah.
And I don't know if you guys ever think about this, but you ever think about it when you're driving in your car that you're kind of like piloting like a spaceship? I know that sounds really stupid, but like
No, I feel you.
I've done that plenty of times. Trust
But,
me.
like, you know,
I'm
you're-
always behind some kind of ship.
you're like driving at night and you're like initiate high beams, boop, 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 boop. You know, like
Yeah, the buttons for like
Where-
missiles or
yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, where are the rockets,
We're
man?
exactly.
Yeah, we're taking.
Dude, every time, Shane, I remember back in the day, every time we'd hop in the show, we're like, powering on
Yeah.
the space cruiser.
Initiate engine.
Here we go.
Now, kind
Oh
of,
yeah, we'd always,
kind of
we'd
a
always-
kind of a personal story of mine. Like when I was going through my divorce a couple of years ago, I had this little Subaru. I think I told Carter about it, and
I'm sure you did.
somebody that I'm related to crashed it. Now, before that, it was like my companion. So it was, you know, I didn't have a place to stay, so that was my bed. And whenever I went from one apartment to the next, jumping from place to place because I couldn't find anyone to stay with because everybody was crazy, that was my Millennium Falcon. That was my, you know, that was my buddy. My, what do you call it? From Castaway? My Wilson.
You're Wilson. Yeah.
That was my Wilson.
Wilson!
Yeah. So when it was
you-
crashed by unnamed family member,
Won't
you know,
put him
it
on
was,
blast.
No.
For
But,
the whole
yeah.
like
Oh, man.
4 listeners.
it crushed me. Yeah, it crushed me.
Yeah, Frank, I remember you telling me that story and how much emotion was involved in that. You're like, dude, that was my baby.
Yeah.
And when I found out that it was destroyed, I was broken.
It was a piece of garbage. But it was my salvation. It was my way of my freedom.
What kind of what kind of car was it?
It was an '88 Subaru Outback.
Outback,
It was-
hatchy.
Yeah, it was the hatchback.
Nice.
It was a little piece of garbage, but to me, it was my way of getting around,
Yeah.
and it was my freedom.
That's the one that you got out of that. Was it a rock sled?
No,
You had a bunch of. Is that a different car?
that was a whole different car, a whole different situation. But it was
That's a crazy story.
yeah. We drove over like a rock slide, not knowing, because like all of a sudden, all I saw was a
Holy
giant
shit.
wall, and it came out of nowhere, and then we just drove over it. I'm like, oh snap! It was like one of those cartoon
Oh my
moments.
gosh.
And the car was full. The car was full. I
Oh,
had
with
about
people.
7 people in the car, in the sedan.
That's
I
insane.
remember you said it was like super. Wasn't it raining and it was super
Yes.
dark out?
That's why we had the landslide. That's why we had all it covered the entire highway. So yeah, we're just lucky we survived that because we literally went over that thing, and it was taller than the car. So yeah,
Good old New York, man.
yeah. So
She'll do it to you.
Yeah, but that wasn't a Subaru, but definitely an adventure.
Oh yeah, yeah. Frank's got a plethora of good ass stories.
Oh yeah,
We'll have to have you back on and just jab sometime.
Oh,
of
definitely.
course,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
There's a lot, but anyway, yeah. Millennium Falcon is definitely a character, guys.
Yeah.
Don't doubt it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think and when you first said it, Frank, I was like, oh man, yeah, I guess I never thought about it that way, but I've been thinking about it ever since you mentioned it in our first kind of Skype call, and I think that it is like it's a really interesting it's a really interesting bond that these characters kind of develop with this ship, because at the beginning when Luke first sees the ship, or I think it's Luke, maybe it's Leia, he's kind of like, oh, we're flying this piece of garbage.
Yep, Luke.
And Han's like, whoa, take it easy, you know, like this thing.
Yeah.
Let me tell you about the parsecs, and
Exactly.
and it totally redeems it. And then, you know, like they make it happen, and it becomes like an iconic fixture. I mean, like,
Yep.
I've always wanted to build the Lego Millennium Falcon. I mean, I think that's
Of course.
what everybody wants, you know.
You know what I thought was really cool about the Millennium Falcon is like in the original 3 movies back in the 70s and 80s with the monster chess
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
that they have.
Yeah.
I don't remember what that game is called, but they brought it back in the
Force
newest
Awakens.
3.
Yeah.
Force, yeah, and you're like, oh, they brought it
Oh, yeah,
back.
dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to know how that game. I have seen an application where that game is actually like somebody made that.
Damn, that's
Yeah.
cool.
There's got to be some rules to that somebody had to just totally whip together, but
Oh yeah.
that'd be a really fun game to play. You know, like instead of chess, I got a glass chess board. That's a lot of fun. But man, if you had some monsters, that'd be like Dungeons and Dragons meets Star Wars chess.
Yeah.
That'd be
Even
pretty
Millennium
sweet,
Falcon
too.
in the asteroid field. That was a huge adventure in episode 5.
Uh-huh.
When
Yeah.
you're in the asteroid field.
It's kind of like Jumanji in a way.
Yeah.
If you're like, oh, asteroid field, shit.
Yeah.
You shouldn't have moved the Loch Ness monster, man. Now we gotta mess with that.
Yeah. Hey, on the note of episode 5, do you guys want to talk about favorite movies or episodes and why?
Episode 5 down, like, there's no, besides the first one, episode 4, episode 5 is definitely the best for me. It was the darkest. It had the line in all of movie theater history, I am your father. And
Power.
the whole theater was like, holy expletive.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my God, like this dark evil thing is now related to you, and that is scary. Like,
It's the
what
biggest
like,
twist.
What do you do? It takes away all the easy answers. Like, you can't kill him because now he's your father. Like, what the? And I'm related
What
to
do
him.
I do?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
Well, and like it's
And
also
that's
like that. It's that twist you never saw coming. You know, it's that.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's that you're so close. You're so close to that person, and the only thing separating you from them, good from evil, is the very, very thin line of perspective.
Yep.
And that's it.
Mm.
You know?
Yeah.
And it's insane. It's right, exactly what you said. All the easier answers fade, you know?
Yep.
And all of a sudden the entire storyline is in the gray.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, well,
Shane, how about you? What's
well, I
your...
was going to say, real quick, I'm going to give a shout out to Ben Elliott again. He's in the same boat as you, Frank. He agrees that that Empire Strikes Back is by far, hands down, the best one. I'm going to go...
Ben.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. Our one super fan. Respect. So, I'm actually going to go a different route, and I'm going to say my favorite movie was the Revenge of the Sith, number 3,
Yep.
for a couple different reasons. One, it completely ties up all those loose ends, really nice and pretty, and it is like exactly what you've been waiting for so long. You've been waiting for this final phase of Anakin's, you know, kind of like downward spiral into Sithhood. You've been waiting to figure out how, you know, how the connection of Sith from, you know, the earlier movies, 1, 2, and 3, in the prequel series, and 4, 5, and 6, how that all ties together.
Yep.
And you've been waiting for this, like, big reveal, but the way they do it is it's like 2+ hours of big reveal. You know, it's this beautiful line between Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, which I thought was a little weak, to
A little bit.
Episode 4, where it's like an entirely new story from a new perspective, continuing off what was. So, apart from that, I also like, one, Anakin, because even though he did turn evil, it was like this ironic downward spiral of like, he wanted something, he wanted to do it because of the fact that he knew that his lover was going to die and it would put their kids in danger, all that kind of stuff, or the unborn children in danger.
Yeah.
Yet he spiraled into his own, his self-awareness faded away with this idea of power and with this quest of like, this is what I have to do, that he became the very thing he hated. You know, he became fueled by the things that are, quote, not the Jedi way.
Yeah.
And I think that's incredible because it shows at the beginning his, impressionability. It shows his impulsiveness. It shows the way that he kind of, focuses more on himself and justifies his actions, possibly, unjustly. But he justifies his actions to make it seem okay what he's doing. He essentially, killed Mace Windu just to get what he wanted, And immediately he realizes by saying, "What have I done?" that his entire life is on its head now.
And it was too far gone. There's no coming back from that.
Exactly. Yeah. And at that point, I think at that point, it's sold. It's done.
Yeah, because you knew they're all going to hunt him down because he killed Mace Windu. And the sad part about it is like he was coming from a place where he thought it was love, but it was more fear of losing.
Yeah. That's a good point too.
Yeah, all those feelings were just contorted, but he loved Padme and he didn't want her to die, but it was more of his fear of losing her than his love for her.
Here's so on that note of like fear of losing and kind of like looking into the face of adversity, I also really liked Obi-Wan Kenobi in that movie, in Revenge of the Sith, and this is why I think it's probably my favorite. So, in Episode 1, Phantom Menace, you see a budding Master Jedi in Obi-Wan Kenobi, but he's young, he still has much to learn. In Episode 2, I think you see a little bit of that, but you don't see as much of, like, his guidance. You just see him, like, kind of walking the walk. But in Episode 3, he's, like, the... So I think a lot of the times writers of these movies will create a character that is, like, the most relatable to the viewer. It's the person who's level-headed, who makes the decision that, as a viewer, you're like, oh, you have to do this because it's what needs to happen for things to get done. Or like, oh, you have to do this because it, that's where we want it to end up as the viewer. And Obi-Wan is that. He's the person that stays level-headed throughout, that entire movie and does what's right and stays true to, like, who he is and his personal connections. He doesn't sacrifice anything until he has to sacrifice his relationship with his apprentice, Anakin.
His best friend.
His brother. The last, and this is why I think it's so sad too, is because it's the last, it's like getting like hand-me-down clothes from a relative that passed away. It's your last thing that reminds you of them. And I know it's a little dark, but Anakin was like his last requested thing from Qui-Gon, who was like the father figure he never had.
Yep.
And by failing Anakin, he failed much more than just one person. You know, he failed far more. And I think just the way that whole story was drawn, those two trilogy lines were connected, I think that was just incredibly well done. And you can almost see that, like, decision to decision creates that. It's not like, oh, they were walking down the street one day and all of a sudden a meteor hit and it changed everything. It's like, well, this decision led to this, and then that one led to that one. And then, well, here, because of that first decision, there's another one that came later because of that. You know, like, the domino effect.
Nudges.
Yeah, the domino effect was amazing in that movie.
Yep.
And that's why I think number 3 was probably my favorite.
Oh, definitely. That's definitely one of the stronger films of the series, which I watched plenty of times.
Yeah.
I watched them all plenty of times.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, like, I totally agree. Empire Strikes Back is amazing. I also really like Return of the Jedi. That one's just incredible. There's not many of the movies that I'm not as fond of, but I think 3 is probably my favorite for those reasons. But yeah, Carter, what do you think? What's yours? What's your favorite movie?
I think my movie ties in with my character. I would have to say Yoda. Simply because the fact that he's just a thug wizard that's just hanging out in the galaxy. Like, you know, he's the dude who's like the wisest because he's like, what, 900 years old or something?
Yeah, something like that.
He's crazy old. He's seen a lot. He's been around the block. He knows right from wrong. And I think that's why it kind of ties into my favorite movie being probably The Empire Strikes Back, but I would say maybe more so New Hope, just like the roll-up. I was going to say Luke, but there's some things that Luke does that just his, him not being all that mature and being like, I'm going to do what I want. Like, Luke, you need to not do this. Well, I'm gonna leave Dagobah because I think my training's done because I need to go save some people at Cloud City.
That's a pretty crappy decision to be pushed into, where it's like, my friends are gonna die. I have no faith in you. I know what I can do. You train me a little bit. I know how to punch and kick a couple times. That's like, now I'm still a white belt, like in Jedi or whatever the equivalent is.
Yeah,
so I might be yellow.
Yeah, pea-colored belt.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I really like Yoda because he's very patient. I mean, at times he really lets him have it. Like, you know, you're really an idiot, Luke. Like, but at the same time, he is very patient. He's like, you know, shakes his head at you for doing something stupid, but he's still there the next morning getting on your head as a puppet. You know, I really loved old Yoda. Like, that was one of the most iconic things growing up and watching those young ones, the old ones. And being so young, just seeing that puppet was so funny. Like, especially the first scene when Luke gets to Dagobah and he goes into the hut, and a little puppet just bouncing around, and, making the funniest faces. And I really love that. And you know what I found was really cool about Yoda is he went to one of the worst places to live. Like a place full of darkness.
Yep.
Because he knew that the Empire would never look for him there.
Yeah, they couldn't see him because it was filled with the dark side.
The dark side, exactly.
Yeah.
So he went to one of the last places he'd expect, and that's crazy cool, crazy smart, and crazy brave at the same time to protect the trueness of the Jedi way.
Yeah,
I thought that was pretty dope. I really do love the rest of New Hope. That's with Hoth, correct? Or is that the Return of the Jedi?
Empire Strikes Back has Hoth.
Hoth is
I'm pretty sure it is Hoth. Yeah. Just that whole kind of bouncing around between, the snow landscape and the jungle landscape and Cloud City landscape.
Yeah.
Oh wait, no. Yeah, it is Cloud City.
Yeah,
you're right.
Yeah. So, and that was when Lando betrays them.
Yeah, again, he was also forced into a decision.
Exactly.
With the hopes of saving him in his people. I guess in the back, because he already had his guy with his Apple Watch. You know, he's typing them all right, I need you to get these guys out of here and stop them. and they tried to get Han Solo, but he couldn't. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And then they carbonate him. Carbonate.
Yeah, he gets
We're gonna
all,
put you in some soda
he gets
pop.
all fizzy.
Yeah.
Fill him with soda
Swells
pop,
up.
and then
Nice
they
and
send him
cold.
off to Jabba.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think I kind of like where you're going with that too, Carter. Like the change of scenery is nice, you know, because I don't know.
Very scenic.
I feel like there's like 3 or 4 main settings. You know, either you're on a spaceship, you're in space,
You're on the Death Star.
yeah, Death Star, or you're like on the dunes of Tatooine. You know, it all circles back
Exactly.
to that godforsaken planet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Always coming
Yeah.
back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who could forget?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what I really like. Frank, I know you said The Empire Strikes Back is your favorite movie. What was your favorite character?
Favorite character? Oh, Darth Vader.
Vader.
Yeah, because
Vader.
he had more of a polished look in that movie. Because the first one, it's almost like the audio was like in a more open room, where now they kind of like toned down. Everything was darker, and he's always like incessantly going after Luke, and we didn't know why, but he knew that was his son. We didn't know until the end of the film,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and just coming through and just making all kinds of deals and setting Luke up to come down and save his friends and trying to trap him, and it was, it was just so cool. Like you started seeing like a more badass version of him in that film. You know, cutting his hand off, beating down Luke, his only son.
Yeah.
You know, just man,
If
Darth
anything,
Vader.
it's almost like, Darth Vader offered him, like he kind of fulfilled the father figure role. I mean, it was tough love, but cutting somebody's hand off forces them to learn quite a bit.
Exactly. That's a good beatdown right there.
Like,
Yeah, how am I gonna wipe?
dog,
I know, right?
take the words out of my mouth. Like, next time, for you guys and for the listeners, next time you go to the bathroom, put yourself in Luke's shoes and wipe with your other hand.
Oh
You know?
man.
If you do your business with your left hand, try with the right ones. You'll be like,
You
well,
might as well.
that sucks.
You might as well just turn the
Exactly.
shower on at that point.
Yep.
Yeah.
Hope you got a bidet. Hey, so
man.
Sit on there for a while.
so I think we could probably talk about this for another 3 hours, but
Yeah.
for the sake of our listeners, we are hitting like that close to hour and a half mark. Do you guys have any final thoughts before we kind of wrap up? Anything you guys want to like touch on super quick?
Well, I'm waiting for part 2 of this discussion, so that's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
And I think next time we can expand our list for sure, but a couple things we have on here is like what makes Star Wars so impressionable. Why is the narrative so prolific? You have things like Family Guy and Spaceballs and Robot Chicken and Thumb Wars and so many more that emulate this storyline or play parody to it. And then you have other opposing kind of like, cousin type stories like Star Trek, that has its own narrative, and it's also
Battlestar Galactica.
it's all different, but it's kind of coming from the same place, and we wanted to talk about that too, but we might have to save that for the next time. So yeah, but anything about kind of like the characters or maybe like new or old trilogy or something like that. I mean, I'm really excited to see what they do with the 9th film, because they're going back from Rian Johnson back to J.J. Abrams as the director, and I'm very excited for that because I think it's going to be one that you see a lot more things tied together, and I'm really excited for that. I'm hoping.
Definitely.
I'm hoping.
yeah.
Yeah. Don't get too worked up.
I'm not gonna put my hopes super high. That's
Exactly.
Disney has taught me that.
Yep.
If Disney has shown me one thing,
It's to just keep the hopes extra low.
Yep.
yeah, not a new hope, a low hope.
Yeah.
Oh,
Damn.
Put them on.
that could just be
Put them on blaster.
full power,
Yeah.
baby.
Yep.
Don't set that thing to.
Yeah, I don't know.
Or I guess do set that thing to stun. Which, by the way, isn't it obnoxious that like all blasters had a stun setting? Like, could there be a conspiracy theory that whenever somebody was killed, they were actually just stunned for a little while?
Yeah, maybe. Oh, he's dead.
No
Then they
Wilhelm
get up
scream.
later.
Yeah.
Yeah, zero Wilhelm scream whatsoever.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think we really grinded out, boys. I think we're relatively rounded for the night.
I think so too. Yeah. Am I cool to run the outro?
Yeah, run that
Yeah.
shit.
Run it. All right.
Right.
Well, first off, Frank, thank you so much for joining us. We do.
Thank you for
Thank
having
you,
me.
sir.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. Not sure what we're gonna do for next week. Maybe we'll do the second one to this, or maybe we'll let the dog sleep for a little while. Let that sleeping dog lie. But we do appreciate everyone who's listening to this right now. Do us a favor, go like our Facebook page, follow us on Spotify, add us on Podbean. Also, if you wouldn't mind, like, any post we make, just sharing it. Right now, we're really trying to get a lot of traction, get some new people to check us out. So if you see a post, just share it real quick. It means the world to us. Also, don't hesitate to reach out to us with, like, any feedback on the show, anything you'd like to see more of. We've gotten some feedback, but anything helps. We're doing this all for you guys. So thank you so much for tuning in. May the force be with you.
May the force be with you.
Always.
See you guys.
Awesome.
Love you. Take care, y'all.